Yeah.
That's up for discussion. You were asked to bring it up for discussion.
Oh, yeah. That's in here?
Rumor has it she's going to. We talked about it.
There's plenty of facts there that can't be disputed. It's not ours against hers.
If she's not guilty, to bring it to.
When we
there ain't
appoint,
nobody.
when we appoint immediately or wait for a month to bring.
That'll be great.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome. It is 4:30, and there being a quorum of council present, I'll call the strategic planning meeting of April 12th, 2022 to order. We are very happy today to have Division 10 Engineer Brett Knipe here from the North Carolina Department of Transportation, who will talk to us about the local roadway maintenance, the State Transportation Improvement Program, and other upcoming local projects. Brett, the lectern is yours.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, live and in person with everyone. I'm not sure how long this council's been back in session together, but a lot of folks that I've been working with for the past several years, we've been huddled up in our virtual meetings, but it's really good to be here in front of folks. Hopefully I can pull this presentation off without that, just a screen in front of me and real live people. So again, I'm Brett Knipe. I'm the Division 10 engineer with NCDOT. Tell you a little bit about, get the right button here. A little bit about NCDOT and how we're structured across the state, and some of you may be familiar with this, but there's 14 highway divisions in North Carolina. We are Division 10, centered there in the center of the screen. I know most folks do know their geography. But across the state, we've all got different challenges. Division 10 is pretty unique. We've got a lot of rural areas in the eastern part of the division and southern Union County in particular. And then we've got fast-growing urban areas expanding from Mecklenburg and into Union and Cabarrus. We've got Cabarrus, Mecklenburg, Stanley, Anson, and Union counties. This slide says we've got 400 employees, and when I talk about that, I like to mention something about the department over the years. That not too long ago, this slide said 500 employees. That's been a fact of life in state government and NCDOT in particular. During my tenure and my career, we've certainly seen our employment rates go down, available funding for employees go down, and so we do manage, though, to continue to keep up our road system. Our responsibilities include the planning, development, design, construction, and maintenance of the state highway system in our division. We've got about, I think it's like 11,000 lane miles in Division 10 and something like 2,000 bridges and culverts, and so that gives you kind of an idea about our system that we're responsible for. And I don't have it broken out on the slides here, but we do have 3 districts inside Division 10. District 3 being Anson and Union counties, and tonight also with me is Travis Pressler. He is the district engineer for this area, and is certainly probably more familiar and intimately familiar with some of the local challenges than I may be, and so he's here definitely to fact check me and hopefully keep me straight tonight. And if there's any detailed questions between the two of us, I think we'll be able to answer your questions. I'm going to talk with you about some projects we've got coming up. There's a list of them here. I'll go into some detail as we slide through each one. These projects I'm going to show you the current dates, the schedules that we're going to go into right-of-way acquisition and the construction with each project and cost. But what we'll cover towards the end after the project updates is a STIP update. That's the State Transportation Improvement Program. Certainly that program is experiencing some challenges recently, and you'll see what I mean as I get into the details of that. But keep in mind that these project schedules are subject to change are subject to change, and especially those that are scheduled in beyond fiscal years 2026. And I don't know, you know, us and the Federal Highway Administration, we can't have just a normal calendar year. Y'all might be the same, so we've got fiscal years starting July 1 of each year. So do that just to keep it lively. First project, James Hamilton Road Realignment. It's the nearest on the schedule. I do expect this schedule to hold pretty close. Realigning James Hamilton Road on Rocky River Road just north of US 74, it realigns it to connect with Myers Road. And the project description, I'll just go ahead and point it out. It's the first flaw in the presentation. I think that's a cut and paste error. My apologies, because it matches the next project as well. And again, if y'all have any questions about this, I can take them now, or we can hold to the end.
So James Hamilton, because I live out that way.
Yeah.
James Hamilton, I understand the feeding into Myers
Yep,
Road.
it's here now.
Okay,
and
so
We're going to realign
can
it up.
people still, can they still make a left turn?
Out of this-
Rocky River?
Yes.
Or a right turn onto Rocky River?
Yes, up here, the existing James Hamilton will stay connected, but it will be a right in, right out
Okay,
at this point here. But up here, it's a full movement intersection,
great,
okay?
thank you.
And ability to make right, or left turns rather, is gonna be probably another subject we can get into, here in just a minute. So, one of the larger projects, that we'll talk about tonight is, a US 74 improvement project. It's a combination of two state projects, U5764 and U5931. It extends, from Rocky River Road and ends at Seacrest Shortcut Road when you combine the two projects. There's also some other subsequent bridge-related projects to the east of there even that will continue to improve the corridor. But as you can see, it's a pretty hefty price tag. Combined, you're pushing the $80 million mark. And with construction scheduled in fiscal year 2027, that is after that magic date of fiscal year 2026 that I mentioned just a moment ago. So these projects that are a few years out are going to be subject to recompetition in our STIP program. They're going to be subject to moving, and I'll explain that in great detail towards the end of the presentation. But I just really wanted to make sure you all understood that going through it.
Clarification for the ignorant, the 70 million is construction cost and the 6.5 is right away?
So no, that was actually the combination of the two total project costs, because they're actually, they're two separate projects, U5764 and 5931. Respectively, they're 70.5 and 6.5 million in total.
Okay.
Right away, utilities, construction. And again, estimated amounts at this point. So this, it's a lot of information on the screen, but the 74 project is what's known as an RCI type corridor. You may be familiar with it. There are several RCI intersections along the 74 corridor to the east and to the west up towards Indian Trail. When I talk about these things, some folks, immediately sort of take issue with this thought of these U-turn bulbs having to turn right to turn left, because that's essentially what's happening. It's a median divided roadway, not unlike many, 4-lane divided roadways. But in this case, you got to go upstream a little bit and make a U-turn. Reduced conflict intersection, that's what that's called, RCI. There are studies out there that show the safety benefits, the operational benefits of such an intersection. And when I try to explain to folks why we're doing this, why we're recommending these types of improvements rather than a conventional intersection where everyone can turn, all the directions you're commonly used to. Our area is blessed in many ways. One of those ways is growth, right? We've seen a steady stream of traffic increases on our major corridors. US 74 is no different. And so what we find is when we plan and design these projects, we're not doing it for today's volumes. We're actually doing it for some horizon year, it's called, So out in the distance, maybe 2045, 2050, we're predicting how much traffic's going to be there because we need to get good utility out of these investments. These are public dollars. It's part of our jobs to be good stewards of public funds. And so we want to build a project that's going to be long-lasting and sustainable. And if we keep building full movement intersections everywhere, our traffic analysis and the math and science that goes behind that tells us that those, in many cases, these projects may fail in those design years. So there's a balance, between keeping local interest. A lot of folks have pushed back on us over the years for projects such as this. So we're still open for conversation, particularly because of the construction year of this project was 2027. I do think it will probably push out to some degree. We will know that information here in the next coming months throughout the course of this summer. So if anyone has any questions about RCI style projects or this project in general, we can talk about those. US 74 and 601, just downstream from the project we just took a look at. This is State Project U5723. And the project is designed to improve the operations of the interchange itself, number one, because it is an antiquated design. It doesn't meet today's design standards. And you'll notice there's two roundabouts, one on either side of the intersection. And roundabouts, they were one of our first innovative intersection designs that came about. Union County is full of them at this point. But years ago, they were certainly controversial. We don't have a lot of folks telling us how bad they hate roundabouts anymore, but that has been a theme in the past. But these roundabouts are expected to operate very efficiently, modernizing the interchange itself. And this bridge also was not originally part of this project, but we did have a bridge replacement project at some point in the future. But if anyone's familiar with that and the dings on the girders, you'll notice that that bridge gets hit quite often by tall loads. Oftentimes it's an excavator on a trailer, it seems like, that will snag those beams. So the bridge height will be increased there as well. Total cost around $18 million. And the construction in 2025, and I think that project is relatively safe. It probably shouldn't push too much if it does. Just another bridge replacement project in 2025. We're not going to be able to build these two projects at Concord Avenue. It's just too close to the 601 interchange. So because of the bridge replacement schedules, we're going to have to figure out which one goes first. And not quite there yet. It could be the 601. I mean, it was certainly farther along. And in my opinion, it's probably a little more needed considering that bridge gets hit so often. But also the projects would serve, I think, as a detour for the other. So we couldn't do them at the same time, logistically. Much cheaper, though, at $4.1 million. A project that's a little farther out in our program is 601 Widening. From the Expressway down to 74. And this project is in a very early stage of planning and development. You'll notice the right-of-way says FY27 and construction says post-year. And by post-year, we mean it's outside of our current 10-year STIP window. This project is, in all likelihood, will have to recompete for funding along with other projects in our division and across the state. That's just going to be an unfortunate fact that we're going to be all faced with projects that have this future year date. But we do have a data-driven ranking and scoring process that allows projects to compete on their own merits, and that was part of our STI law. I don't know if anyone wants a quick history lesson in transportation funding in the state, but it came about in 2013, and we're still trying to get used to it and figure it all out. Another project that's a little farther out is it's called Charlotte Avenue Widening, and I'm not deeply familiar with every project in the division across all the counties, but after I investigated this one a little bit further, it's a pretty short distance. It's actually really it it's more of an intersection improvement project and a capacity improvement project to widen Charlotte Avenue. But there could be some alternatives out there where maybe you just widen the up and downstream legs of the north-south route. And so this project, because of its post-year construction date, it'll wind up recompeting for competition as well. But there may be a way to do it a little bit cheaper by reconsidering it and therefore maybe delivering it earlier. We do have a lot of small project programs in the division, a lot of other, not so extravagant TIP level projects, but we have spot safety improvements, spot mobility improvements, where projects have to compete based on, safety data, crash history, things like that. And so this W5710, Old Charlotte Highway and Williams Road, simply just installing a traffic signal and a turn lane, that's going to come on board next summer. SM5710G, another, that's a spot mobility project, and it's another intersection improvement that helps, treat an isolated congested condition. And a safety project, a rail project to improve the crossing gates on Weddington Road. All coming on pretty soon. So we do have an annual resurfacing program in the division. We break it out by county. There's typically, there could be 1, 2, sometimes even 3 resurfacing contracts going on in any county at one time. Our annual resurfacing program has fluctuated over the years. I would say between $35 to $40 million on the high end. And so that sounds like a decent amount of money, and it is. We're really glad to have it because at the root of it, that's where many of our complaints come from is asphalt conditions, right? I mean, it's almost like I've always said in my career, I've spent time in construction and maintenance and in our district office in Charlotte and design, and every time I'm like, everything really is incidental to the asphalt when it comes right down to it. And so the resurfacing program is probably one of our most valuable tools in our asset management toolbox. I'll try to cover a couple of the maps here. It may be a little difficult to read in this format, and it may have been easier to provide a list, but because we've got 3 different colors on the screen for maps completed, under contract, and then under contract and to be completed at a later date, we do have several contracts again floating around at any one time. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. I'm having trouble seeing it on my screen in front of me. But we could definitely
tell us what the blue, green, and yellow means.
So maps completed is green. Orange, under contract with a completion date of July 1st, 2022. And blue is under contract with a completion date of July 31st, May 31st, 2023.
Can you give us the location to the color?
Excuse me?
Give us the location to the color, what color goes with
Yeah,
which
we can't
road?
even see the.
I know, and I apologize. The format's not that great. I'd have been better off with a list. This is Hampton Meadows Subdivision here in green.
Okay.
Propel Way, Tower Industrial Drive, Price Shortcut Road, and a section of US 74 between Dickerson and Seacrest Shortcut. But we'll actually have a small section of Dickerson to be included. And that work, I know, is supposed to start really soon. We've had a lot of complaints about the asphalt in that area. I'm sure if anyone here has driven it, you're well aware of it.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. And you know what, that was a location where we were trying to do the right thing because we had a project coming in the same area. And at one time, that project date was coming up really quick, right? But as we had our financial challenges over the years, we saw that project date move out. So it wouldn't have made sense at the time to go out there and spend those valuable resurfacing dollars on an area that would just get overlaid by a project in the near future. But knowing what we know today, we knew we had to add that back into our resurfacing program, and we did.
That's 3, you say, or?
Yes, that's this year.
Okay.
Travis and I actually were chatting about these resurfacing maps just today. And we believe the contractor intends to mobilize out here possibly within the next month or two and to be paved at night,
Right.
obviously with the traffic volumes we've got,
Thank you.
certainly. So another map, is that NC 207? I have really hard. Yeah. And then, and again, orange under contract to be completed by July 1st of this year. Blue under contract completion of May 31st of next year. Lake Monroe subdivision here, Folger Road here. And that's just the maps in this general area of Monroe. I mean, there's certainly more the farther you get out away from the city. There's one other specialty map that's going to be included in our plan. We actually received some COVID relief money that was allocated through the MPO, CRTPO. I can't remember the total number. I think it was upwards of $8-9 million that we got in COVID relief funds, and that's very welcome pot of money that we were able to use, some on some striping improvements across the division, some on some specialty paving opportunities, and then even some signage upgrades where we've always struggled to fund in the past.
Well, I want to commend you on that one. If you go back 2 slides, that Walnut Street up to Dickerson Boulevard or Martin Luther King, that's sorely needed. So I'm glad. Just to be quite honest with you, we all refer to those as our gateways. I mean, because a lot of people still come down Old Charlotte
Sure.
Into our city. And it's such a bad repair. It really is a reflection on the city as well as the state. And of course, any chance I get, I try to explain to them it's a state issue, it's not a
Right.
local issue.
And citizens have a trouble, they don't always distinguish between
That's right.
local government
That's
and state government, right?
But that area is terrible. And I'm not going to interrupt your I don't mean to interrupt it or prolong it, but I think the same could be said for, I'm going to call Concord Avenue. Now, that would be in front of Benton Heights School. We've recently relocated utilities in that area and created new curbing. It's really right in there in front of Benton Heights School. That
Okay.
wouldn't mean anything to you, but it really stems from 74, the bridge coming over that you're talking about replacing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about coming into the city of Monroe. Now, both of those are really 2 gateways to our city from the north and west. And I'm just going to recommend it. I'm not demanding anything. I'm just suggesting that since we have done that work, Sarah can fill you in on this. It's been,
Sure.
Water, sewer, curbing, guttering, all of that in that area. It's in pretty bad shape.
The asphalt.
Right.
Okay.
And so I'm not talking about, a $50 million job here.
Right, something that maybe we could get done on our resurfacing
Right.
program.
I would just highly recommend those 2. I
Well,
really think our city,
We'll definitely take note of that.
I appreciate it.
And do a little bit of research.
Right.
We do have it's called a HMIP, Highway Maintenance Improvement Plan. It's actually a rolling 5-year plan of resurfacing maps, okay? So, each year, these roads get rated, they get a score placed on them, and so we're competing. Again, we're data driven, right? We're supposed to be competing which roads do you pave, which improvements do you make. But there is some latitude there. And so it could be that road is coming up next in that plan. Or it could be that the conditions have changed and it needs to move up in that plan. And so we can look at these things. So,
I think the work we did out there didn't help it any.
we're familiar with what construction can do to
Right,
adjacent road systems.
But that would be a shorter run than the Old Charlotte Highway run. And I'm talking about the same area, from Walnut Street back to 74.
Are you pretty familiar with that?
A little bit, yeah.
What-
Front of Duke's Grill, front of Benton Heights Elementary School, that section right in there. Yeah.
I was there the other day.
Okay, all right. So, and those 2 sort of tie together.
Okay.
As far as I'm personally concerned, the Concord Avenue and the Old Charlotte.
We'll take a look at it. I mean,
It's
and-
something I want to mention.
I can't make a hard promise or anything. but
I'm not.
Maybe there may be some latitude again that we've got, and we can
Right.
see what we
But
can
we
do.
do, I just want to bring to your attention that I think you caught this, but Charlotte Avenue is being targeted.
Yeah, I did that. I got that.
Yeah.
And like I say, this is pretty close
Pretty
to
close
it.
to it.
It is really a shorter run.
It is.
So
Go ahead.
Sarah might want to.
Concord Avenue is the city street, so we are planning to resurface it all the way to the bridge. We were
So,
just waiting on those projects to get completed, so that will be on the next resurfacing list for us.
Okay.
So then our bridge project.
Well,
is right there.
she took the pressure off of you.
That's an
Oh,
easier
Mr.
answer.
Canard,
Right.
don't commit to it.
Took
I
the
should have
pressure
gone
off
there
of you.
first. I should have
Right.
said, "You sure it's not your road?" But
Right.
hey, thank you. I think the slide deck kept moving on me. I didn't press those buttons. Here we go. So we're going to transition now from talking about projects to talking about our overall plan, right? The STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Plan. Our STIP, again, it's a 10-year program, and typically it moves forward in every 2 years. The STIP receives a block of new projects that are inserted into that program in concert with the local planning organizations. In City of Monroe's case, that's, again, CRTPO. Those projects are inserted. There's cost estimates ran. There's preliminary work that's done. And again, we've been working on this since 2013. It's getting some age on it now, right? The STI law that told us that projects needed to compete in this manner for scoring every couple of years. So what has transpired in the transportation industry, along with many other industries, I'm sure some of y'all are involved in businesses or even in your personal lives where you've noticed many things costing more than they once did. In particular, right-of-way has been just the value of land has gone up tremendously, not just here locally, but across the whole state. And so you've got that, you've got material price increases, you've got estimates that were done several years ago that need to be updated. So we did all that. We updated these estimates across the entire state, and we determined that our STIP is extremely heavily overprogrammed. This P6.0 process, that might not mean a lot to you folks if you're not involved in that planning organization very much, but it was a pretty big deal for us to halt this. That's P6.0, prioritization 6.0. It was that round of prioritization of projects that get inserted into the STIP program. Projects were selected, they were scored, so we could all know kind of how they fell out and how they ranked. But while all that was happening, we recognized that our funding wasn't there. We didn't have money in our plan for new projects. We didn't have money in the plan for existing projects. And so it didn't make any sense to anyone to add more projects to a list that we couldn't afford to build. So we have that project list out there in 6.0. It's kind of on hold while we work through this coming year to redevelop and redefine our STIP program. And so that's what we're doing. We want to develop a plan, and this is very important to me because I deal with so many people that count on what we tell them, right? When we have a project and we say, we're going to build this project in 2025. Folks want the project built in 2025 because they're planning their lives around it. They're planning business decisions around it. Municipalities are expending their public dollars oftentimes, to work with our plans. And so it's very important to me and to the department across the state that we develop a reliable, accurate transportation plan that everyone can count on. That magic date of 2026 that I mentioned earlier, we're calling that delivery projects. So if a project is in the STIP between now and FY 2026, it's called a delivery project, but even then, that delivery project may have to potentially go and recompete if it gets pushed very far out because we're so overprogrammed. Even the money that we have between now and 2026 isn't enough to cover all those projects. So even those projects will have to move out to the right on the time scale. So this slide shows us our three funding tiers across the state. We have statewide mobility. That's interstates and certain primary routes, US 74 being one of them, is actually eligible for statewide tier funding. Regional tier funding, that is a combination of Division 10 and Division 8, which is out to our east. So projects in that category are more like other primary routes, you know, like an NC 200, 205, those types of numbered routes. And then the division needs tier are your local routes, your secondary roads, roads other than that, or projects other than those that would fit in the other categories. So each one of these buckets, the division, all 14 buckets, the 7 regions, and the single statewide tier, if you tally those up, I didn't do it on this slide, but I think we're in the $8 billion. Actually, this is the pre-IIJA column, so I bet you if we add them up, that's an $11.6 billion range of over-programming. Meaning, in our 10-year project window across the state, there's $11.6 billion worth of projects that the state cannot afford to build, given our current funding stream. You know, if the funding stream changed, obviously that would change what we could deliver. With the IIJA, the federal infrastructure bill, that number is dropping down to somewhere in the $8 billion range. So it's good, you know, it's a big help, it's going to be good, but there's still an $8 billion funding hole that we're faced with. And so with those kinds of numbers, you know, there's no doubt that we are not able to deliver the program as we know it today. And so we're going to continue to work on this issue throughout the course of this year. I would say towards the end of this month, early May, we're actually going to have a draft STIP list of projects that's going to be available to the public. And we're going to be presenting that to the planning organizations. We've got 3 here in Division 10 to contend with, but we're going to present that information. It's going to show where these projects fall, right? When's the money available to deliver the program, to deliver specific projects. And I expect that that's going to be a very difficult conversation because a lot of folks are going to want their projects. And it's very understandable that folks are not going to be happy about the situation. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances for sure. And, you know, again, shy of any funding changes, this is our reality, right? It's the amount of money that we get from the gas tax, highway use taxes, all that stuff, new vehicle registration fees. By the way, which has a trending down potential with electric vehicles, you know, more fuel efficient vehicles, we're burning less gas. Therefore, our funding could actually decrease over time. Again, that list will be out hopefully by May. Throughout the course of this year, we're going to be able to talk with the MPO, maybe even to swap projects if there's priority projects inside the planning organization. If one project is desired to move in front of another and the MPO has a consensus on that and the projects are within 10% of each other, we could even swap them. All that's got to take place throughout the course of this year. Then towards at December, and after all that public involvement, all the local involvement, we're going to present that to the Board of Transportation for approval. And then it goes through a process all into the summer of 23 where FHWA would also concur with our STIP program, the financially constrained, as it's called, STIP program. So covered a lot there, and you know, I was trying to emphasize a few things, and hopefully you guys got an appreciation for where we stand on these projects. We'd love to be able to bring things to fruition sooner in most cases, and unfortunately I think projects with those later construction years we can all expect to move out for the reasons I covered there. That's the end of the presentation. Be glad to answer any questions, sure, or try.
Talking about electric cars, what's going to happen to our highway roads when electric cars take over and there's no gas tax?
So that's been an ongoing debate across this country, across the state. I saw a presentation from, I think it was the director of of the highway system in Utah. Utah has developed a system to make the electric vehicle users accountable and pay for their fair share, so to speak. It's vehicle miles traveled is the term. So, and this gets into a little bit of a controversial topic in some people's minds because, well, how do you know where I drive? Are you tracking me? You know, what is big government doing, right? Well, the fact is, I think if you have a smartphone or a modern vehicle with, a computer system, that information is pretty much readily available. North Carolina's not quite there yet, but I saw another presentation. I think it was at the maybe the March meeting of the Board of Transportation, where a company presented to our board describing a method that they believe that they could implement such a program. And so there's been a lot of studies, a lot of thought, and our State Board of Transportation is absolutely keenly aware of that issue. And I think we're all going to see something out along those lines probably pretty soon. We have to, right? We've got to keep our funding up. And the more electric vehicles that are on the road, we've got to figure out how to let them pay into the system. Good question there. Yes, sir.
A little shorter term question. Does the federal infrastructure bill that was passed had a lot, and I think I may be wrong, so don't quote me on it, but $1 trillion or something. Is that none of that money going to filter down and help us with bridge? We got bridge improvements that are needed. We got highways. We got these, and all over the country it's necessary and needed. I'm not arguing that point, but I'm just asking, do you think any of that will filter down to the state or our local level?
So I'm not an expert on it. The thing is very complicated. There are folks at NCDOT that are spending, days and nights trying to interpret it. Even folks at the federal level are debating certain aspects of the bill. But from what we know about it, you saw that our state transportation improvement plan could be impacted somewhere in the neighborhood $3.5–4 billion. I think it's a 5-year period that the bill is good for, but we call it in our whole 10-year program. So out of the amount of money that was allocated to infrastructure improvements across the country, North Carolina is seeing, based on that information, $3.5–4 billion for the highway system.
It's not going to solve all your problems, obviously.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And you could dig in deep. I mean, I started doing some rough numbers when I'm just like everyone else, right? I mean, I'm hearing about this on the news and, I'm thinking of how much trillions of dollars we're talking about. And if you divvy that up between equally among states and, not to try to do the math here in front of you, but it seemed to me that there would be more money available for highway improvements. I'm a little biased because, highway guy, but I guess there's other infrastructure related funding that's associated with the bill. Yeah, and it's just like there's other the federal funds that we receive for a lot of our projects. This is part of that, right? This is just all of it's not really new money, The FAST Act was the last federal infrastructure bill, the funding bill that gave us our federal transportation funds, right? This is now IIJA. It's just the next iteration of it.
Mr. Canuck, another real fast one. Do you feel most of the wear and tear, the huge potholes and stuff on our state roads are caused by the deregulation of trucking industry from years ago where they're way overloaded now? Because that's where your pounding really comes in.
From a technical perspective, heavy trucks are certainly the biggest factor in pavement design, pavement thickness. If you want to know how much pavement you need on a new road, you need to know how many trucks are going to be projected to use that road. So certainly heavy vehicle traffic has an impact. Whether or not it's the biggest factor, that would be pretty speculative of me to say. Certainly it is a factor. I would say as much as anything, just my own personal experience, what I've seen through the course of my career, it has become increasingly difficult for us to maintain our infrastructure with the funding that we've got. If you look at the actual dollar amounts that we get to maintain our road system in our general maintenance reserve, And that's just, what we have to patch these potholes with, to keep roads in decent shape with. It hasn't really changed much in a very long time. And the dollar, as we know it today, doesn't do what a dollar did 10, 15 years ago by a long stretch. So the actual amount of money we have to pay for materials, asphalt included, is much smaller. It's a much smaller piece of the pie chart than it used to be. So I would say, as much as anything, it's funding.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment that, your speech this afternoon is as good as I've heard. I generally will sit here and won't listen, but I've listened about every word.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'm certainly glad to see, especially some of these projects right here in the city of Monroe. Is there a way for for the larger pothole issues, and trust me, we get inundated as a council about that, and a lot of times people just don't understand a city maintained road versus a NCDOT maintained road. But when you look at, for example, Old Charlotte Highway, a lot of those potholes have been fixed with kind of that loose gravel.
Yes.
And it typically lasts a month or two, and then the potholes right back to where it was. I'll give you an example. If you know where Fire Station 4 is, out by the airport, they changed 6 tires in one day from a huge pothole on Old Monroe Road. I mean, it was blowing tires out. It was to a point where it was blowing out tires, and the people became disabled, and they were pulling right into Fire Station 4, and Fire Station 4 was coming at work. Thank goodness they were willing to assist. But, and that pothole had been reported, and at one point it had been fixed with the gravel, but, the gravel just,
Was it colder weather at the time?
It's been within the last couple months.
Yeah.
It just doesn't last.
No, I don't
If we could
disagree.
fix that with just a little bit better grade
I would.
material.
I agree.
I mean potholes in general, not just that one, but I'm just.
So that's called the one-man patcher. That's
Right.
what we call that, right? It's a tar and gravel patch. I mean, you've got a hopper on that truck. You've got that contains the stone. You've got a tank that contains the bituminous emulsion, which is the tar, the tack. Those two products have to blend together. You blow out the hole, clean it out. It's got an air compressor on it. Squirts the stuff in there. If that ratio's wrong, it doesn't work that well. If the temperature is cold, that makes it even more difficult. It is by no means what I would consider a top of the line or even a permanent patching product. I've talked with our division maintenance engineer, Worth, who's a former district engineer here in Travis's office, about this very subject and how we could maybe improve our program, because this story is it's true in all of our counties, and I bet you it's probably true across the state. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances. What I really would like to see, and I'll just give you, because we're talking about it, Brett Knipe's opinion. When I started in maintenance in Mecklenburg County, I went there somewhere like 2005, 2006 as a maintenance engineer, and I had about 30 employees in my office. That was just covering half of Mecklenburg, so we had 2 maintenance offices. I had anywhere from 20 to 40 inmate laborers that we picked up every day that served on our crews, that were part of our work crews. We had 4 hot mix asphalt thermalate trucks, they're called, that you went to the asphalt plant, you got your hot mix asphalt. If it was wintertime, you could use a cold patch product, which is a prepackaged product. Either way, you could heat it up, because again, asphalt's very subject to the temperatures, ambient as well as its own temperature. And we patched potholes in that way, and they lasted a lot longer. We no longer have access to these inmates. That's my opinion. It's a big issue. I don't know that everyone else across the DOT shares that, but that's just my opinion. I think that would help us if we had that inmate labor force back. Certainly, if we had the money to buy the tonnage of asphalt that it takes to patch those potholes, because it's a more expensive method, and you're putting people out in the road, so it's traffic control, it's cones, it's all that stuff, all that adds up to money. I'd love to give you a better answer, but I'm trying to give you an honest one, so,
All right, no, I appreciate it.
yeah.
Thank you.
We'd rather have the honest, anyway, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Knight, thank you very much, certainly appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so
If y'all have any other follow-up questions, you got my contact information. Travis certainly is readily available to help answer anything else as well. And thank y'all.
Thank y'all for
Thank
being
y'all for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Chris Patay, Economic Development.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
It
evening.
is.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to update you on some of the activities. As you all know, we're transitioning. Back when I started here in 1999, it was just with the city, and in 2013, we were basically through an interlocal agreement shared with the county and the rest of all the other municipalities. And as we enter July 1st, we will be transitioning into the new organization that will be representing all of the county as well. And so I thought it was a good time to give you an update on sort of what we've been up to. It's been fast and furious ever since COVID. So some of the folks were there at our board meeting this morning, so I apologize for the repeat. But we're going to go over a couple things, quick snapshot of the community and its labor, sort of the current project load that we've had, the upcoming activities, our retail initiative, some product development items, a sneak peek on one item that I think you'll find interesting and that we talked about back in the summer, and then the new commission's status. As we look at the civilian labor force, this is what it was for February, is the most recent information that we have. We have 125,000 people in the county's labor force. This is still a little bit shy of what labor force we had in February before COVID, in February of 2020, which is interesting considering the growth that we've seen in the county. But looking at January of 21, we have just over 3,000 more people working in our county today than we did in January of 21. If you look at the unemployment rate, we are at 3%. We were at 2.5% in December, and it went to 3% in January, and is 3% in February. Again, looking at that number for January, we have about 5,000 people working today. So it's about 3,000 more in the labor force than January, but about 5,000 more people working than in January of 21. If you look around the region, it's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but we are the lowest, and we have continued to be the lowest unemployment of any county in the Charlotte region. This is something that we've been very proud of, that the economy that we've been able to weave together has sustained through all the recessions and everything else, and throughout all of that, we've always been the lowest unemployment in the region. I wanted to show you this just to give you an idea. The dark blue is 2020, the light blue is 21, and green is 22. These are that's the labor force numbers in the bar. And so you can see the fluctuation that has occurred, and primarily in this section here, which can barely kind of show up in the gray, is really the COVID was right in that area. The number that we got to in unemployment was about 11% in those first couple months. But those people didn't vanish. Those bars that you see there, I don't know if I can make the mouse, but where it drops down in April and May to about 112,000 folks, they didn't disappear. They were displaced. They were not working. So the real number and the problem with this is there was a lot of garbage that was coming into the system. Our real number, effective unemployment rate, was over 20%. And think about that. I mean, that's a hard thing. 1 out of every 5 people are looking for a job. So we had 25,000 people out of work. And to see what has occurred and how strong the economy has bounced back really shows how what we've put together is resilient to withstand that. And then within today, February of 2020, we were at 3% unemployment. February today, we're at 3% unemployment.
Question.
Yes, sir.
How, out of those 20,000 so people, how many of them just didn't want to work?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that were happening. In the beginning, I don't think it was such a shock to the system. Government hadn't responded. We talked about that a little bit this morning, that you did have the government subsidies started to come in and people, were able to stay home. And then that really destroyed very quickly some of the work ethic that we had in the community. But that was across the nation, not just here. So there was some of that. But now that you're at 3%, you're dragging people out from under the shade tree to make them work. So it's over the years we've been able to sustain the growth of new jobs being created because of population growth. Right now we're still seeing that labor force kind of flat compared to what we were, but the demand has been much more. So right now our industries are really trying to have a hard time to find employees without having to move up their pay scales pretty dramatically. The kind of look at where we are right now. So we look at several measures throughout the year. We are judged on an annual basis, so January to December on a lot of things, but typically for our work plan, we look at the fiscal year that matches up with the city's fiscal year. So from July 1 to today, 9.5 months, we've had 128 projects come into the office. That's not just inquiries. You add inquiries on top of that, that number gets pretty big. We average about 65 to 67 projects a year. So at 128, we're already 178% of our goal. Our goal is 72 projects. We'll really double what we had normally seen a whole year just in the first 9.5 months. This is the load, the makeup of that, where, again, we're a manufacturing community. We'll be a manufacturing community for a long time. The difference is we're precision manufacturing. So the pieces and the parts that are made here, literally at the end of the product has a life at the end of it. So if it's not made correctly, someone could die. And so the precision manufacturing that exists in this community is pretty phenomenal and the envy of a lot of people. So we're continuing to grow that, and it's just getting more and more sophisticated. You look at right now the pipeline that's active, we have 28 what we call suspects. So a suspect, just to remind you, is a company that has shown interest in us and is a little bit more than an inquiry. So they've asked for some information, they're asked for a particular site or a building. When it comes down to a prospect, is they have done some due diligence and they started to thin that group, and so we're still in the game on that. And so we're in the prospect stage. Once they come and take a visit, or they have legitimately cut us down to sort of the final 3, final 10, then they're in the project stage. And then they come down the funnel all the way to being announced. So we've had, since July 1, 11 announced projects. So looking at the active pipeline, that 39 is worth about $1.7 billion of investment. And again, it's about 59% manufacturing there. Agribusiness always, for the most part, has held at the number 2 spot. And then logistics is number 3. Commercial office, we're just really not in that game. The part of the county that really plays the best in that would be the western edge, but places like Weddington and Marvin do not want to participate in the economic development side of things. They just want to be a residential community. So it's up to places like Monroe to really bring in that tax base for the county. So looking at the year so far, we're very proud of this. We've had $273 million announced. Our average goal is $65 million. So we're at 420% of our goal. Job creation, we want to create 300 per year. We're at 720 jobs so far. We have 2 more projects in the pipeline, one you'll hear later on tonight, that should bring us to about $321 million for the year and almost 1,000 jobs. So given that, this will be, if everything works as planned, this will be the best year on record for economic development. Want to kind of, again, as we said, we're transitioning out of the current organization into the new, and as we look at that, we're currently at $1 billion since we merged and took over the county. So $1 billion in this community and almost 2,700 jobs announced. And again, those jobs are paying in the $45,000 per year wage or higher, or significantly higher. So we're very, very proud of that. Now that COVID is over, we're back on the road, so it feels good to get out there and start to market the community. Coming up in July, we have the food show in Chicago, and so teaming up with the state of North Carolina and going to that, Ron and Rachel in our office will be going and representing us there, and then a few days later she'll have to repack and hopefully have time to wash her clothes and be on a plane to go to Europe with me to Farnborough. So we'll go to the UK, again, with the state of North Carolina to work on the aerospace community. And that's hopefully just the beginning, and then we'll start to really hit the pavement again to bring in new projects. Existing industry is one of those things that our program starts with existing industry, taking care of the ones that we have here and making sure that they grow. Ron does a phenomenal job with that. It's almost been 20 years since he joined me working the existing industry side. So we have 2 seminars. One is tomorrow, the workforce development, and trying to give resources and direct our industries on where they can find additional folks. One of the ones that we've added to that is the North Carolina Military Business Center. And they have a website that basically shows all the people that are leaving the military and what skills they have and how we can place them into some of those industries. So you have some really well-trained folks that we can try to incorporate into our workforce here. Second is automation in Industry 4.0. And as you look at things with the pressure on our labor force, that's where we're going to see a lot of investment now is in automation, which again is tax-based. So we're happy to see that as well. When we look at, there's some other things. We're kind of known for the industrial recruitment, but what most people don't know is we have a retail initiative. City of Monroe has been part of this for about a little over 4 years now with retail strategies. And so retail strategies is our arm and goes and works that community. Retail is a different animal, just like downtown economic development is a different animal than what we do. The retail is a much different animal, and so they bring the expertise that we don't have to this game. It takes a while, just like with most economic development, for these things to take hold, and we finally have seen the benefits of that with Burlington Coat Factory, the Ollie's that's opening up, as well as Hobby Lobby and Ulta are making a big run trying to get into Monroe and examining certain sites. So we're real excited with that effort with retail strategies. Another thing is product development. Obviously, we build industrial parks and spec buildings, but we're also redeveloping products, and thanks to help with folks like Majib to get us through the Brownfields program. We had the Cooper Tool site now has been demolished, and so you can see on the right-hand side that picture is the site now graded flat and ready to go, and so we're marketing that site as well for the city. It's about 75 acres that we were able to get for just pennies on the dollar for that site. Here's a little sneak peek that's coming, and then we'll give you a lot more information. But the Winchester Redevelopment that we talked about this late summer and fall is land design is completed their layout, and we're actually meeting with an architect on Thursday to kind of go through the final concept of some of the buildings that would be on site, and then hopefully working with the signage group that did all the wayfinding in the city to come up with some signage for this as well. So we're excited to bring that finished project to you. So there's some things like that in the inner part of Monroe, trying to make a productive site out of a basically vacant piece of land the city has and bring job opportunities there. And finally, is the new organization. We have elected our chairman is Commissioner Richard Helms, and our vice chairman is the mayor. And so Mayor Holloway is there with us, watching over us. We've got Brian and then Freddie. Thank you for being on that group as well as Dennis Rape and Mark Watson from the county. We have appointed our officers. We've adopted the employee handbook. We've adopted our rules and regulations to keep me out of jail. We've submitted the applications for the state retirement system. So it's called ELGERS, the local government employee retirement system. We've made that application. We will know on April 28th whether that has been accepted. And that's a huge hurdle for us to clear. And once we do that, it should be moving very, very quickly. It's taken a lot of help from a lot of other folks to get us to this point. And so we're excited. You don't have as much respect for something until you try to actually create a new government and all the paperwork it takes to form that. There's a lot of things I took for granted. As long as I've been in government, I still, appreciate the teammates at the city of Monroe so much, even more so after going through this endeavor to this point. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody for the support as we've gone through this. We are the tip of the spear when it comes to a lot of things, but we would not be successful if it was not for this wonderful team that we have in this building. Whether it's water and sewer, electric, gas, planning, permitting, engineering, it's IT, it's everybody that allows us. Bridget keeps us going straight. So if it wasn't for the team around us that Monroe is blessed to have, Monroe, all this economic development doesn't matter. Our office could not be successful without everyone else here. So just want to say thanks to that and again applaud our teammates here.
Thank you.
Good job.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you have any questions or any other information in a detailed dive, just let us know and we'll be able to get you any information you want. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think what we are seeing, what we saw this morning and saw this afternoon is a new collaboration with the city of Monroe and the county of Union that really can do some great things. And we thank you very much for your help on that, Chris.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to declare a recess. We'll meet back here at 6 o'clock.
And if I may.
Yes, sir.
Our Mayor Pro Tem is open to moving that third item to the May strategic, if everyone is in agreement with that, rather than lengthen the current agenda a little more.
Is there any objection to that?
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Gary. So we'll recess until 6.